We're going to be talking about the role of the product manager. So how, I'll just ask Nigel and Phuc to give a very quick introduction. So Nigel, we have been speaking to you, but if you can just give a very quick recap of your role, and then we'll be asking the same for Phuc, and then we'll get into kind of some of the more details afterwards. So welcome,
Yeah,
Nigel.
sure. Thanks, Rory. Hi, Phuc. Hi, everyone on the meeting. My name is Nigel. I'm currently the Chief of Staff to the Head of Product at Zendit. Zendit is a Southeast Asian payments and financial infrastructure company that's looking to build digital infrastructure for Southeast Asia. It's a company headquartered in Indonesia. I've been a product manager since I joined Zendit, which is for 4 years now. And what I do in my role currently as Chief of Staff to the Head of Product is to effectively help the Head of Product do his job better. And so the scope that covers will potentially take up this entire time. So I'll pass the time on to Phuc to introduce himself in this company.
Thanks. I think you might be on mute, Phuc.
I can unmute now. Thanks. Hi, my name is Phuc. Thanks, Nigel, for the instructions. My name is Phuc. I work for Live Payments company in Australia, founded in 2006, and my company builds payment solution for both SME and taxi industries. We have an online solution and in-store solution. For me, I work as senior product owner for online solution, where we offer payment gateway for all the card in Australia. My company has a head office in Australia. So I also have an office in the Philippines and Ho Chi Minh City and Vietnam. So I worked in remotely for Vietnam to support product manager in Australia to build the solution for Australian market.
Excellent. So yeah, I'll just dig into that a little bit more while you're mentioning it. So can you explain that structure? So you're a product owner based in Vietnam, and then product management is based in Australia. Is that correct?
Yes, the whole product management works based on Australia because the market are there, the targeted customer are there, and the development team, the IT team, and myself based in Vietnam.
Great. And can you give me an indication of like the scale of it? Like how many product managers are there? How many development teams are there, and how that kind of structure works?
Yeah, we have 2 product manager in Australia, and we have 4 development team in Vietnam. So product manager do the research work, product visions, and product metric in Australia. So, and we need to transfer that vision into backlog for the 4 development team in Vietnam. So product owner in Vietnam will be in charge of the delivery.
Excellent. All right, and Nigel, if we can jump back to kind of your structure. I know you touched on it briefly in your last talk, but can you recap on what is the product structure within Zendit, and kind of particularly touching on the product managers, how many there are and how they're aligned?
Sure. So currently we've got about 70 to 80 product managers. Well, by managers, I just mean people working in the various levels of seniority in the PM role. So that can be anything from the associate PMs at the most junior, excuse me, to senior PMs, to product leads that are in charge of product groups. The way that the product function is structured at Zendit is we've got a head of product who is the ultimate owner and accountable for product at Zendit. And then we've got 4 product groups within the product org: payments, merchant experience, internal services, and the fintech group. Each of these are headed by a product lead who is accountable for that domain. And within each of these product groups, there are multiple product teams. Each of these product teams will have at least 1 PM. At times, 1 PM could have a portfolio of multiple products. And most of the teams will have a APM also helping to staff the team and to help the PM to work on various tasks. The product teams are not intentionally structured or organized around regions. Sendit has always been a remote first company even before the pandemic. So I was pretty used to working in t-shirts and shorts even before COVID hit us. And so the way in which we hire PMs, well, yes, we do focus on the countries that we're operating in, but if there are there's good talent that we find has a culture fit with Sendit and has the right skill set, they pass our hiring process. Even if they're working in a place such as London or in the UK, we will do our best to make it work.
Excellent. So is it quite a geographically diverse team then, or is the majority of people co-located and then a couple diverse?
Yeah, so the majority of people are co-located in places like Indonesia, Philippines, and Singapore. We have a couple in Malaysia. And then, so that just is the way in which how do I put it? The majority of applicants come in from these countries. And so whenever we find a fit, we will of course want to bring them on. So it has turned out actually that most of the product employees are in these territories, but it's not intentionally so.
Okay, excellent. So thanks for giving us that background on how you're structured, because I think that's going to be relevant as we go through the rest of the questions. So Nigel, can I touch on one point around, and I'm going to bring up a quote from Marty Kagan, where he said in his book Inspired, which is often referred to as the Bible for product management, that he can't see how a person can do all of the responsibilities of a product manager in less than 60 hours a week. So he lists things like they need to be talking to customers, they need to be managing relationships with internal stakeholders, preparing the vision for the product, tracking delivery, managing performance, managing looking at the market, like all of these tasks. So what are the responsibilities of the product managers within Sendit, and how do you manage that kind of overburden, is it, or do you have ways of kind of trying to lighten the load for people?
Yeah, I think Marty is in Inspired. He is listing out all of the various tasks that a PM will expect to encounter in their role as a PM. But I think, of course, we don't have the opportunity to press him in the book. And if, he ever attends something like UXDX, maybe, on a panel like this, we could.
We've had him on before, so next time we ask for him back, we'll...
I remember seeing that. But I think if we were to ask him, he would not say that many of these responsibilities, so to speak, are the core role and measure of success of a PM. Because if you're, if you're joining 10 meetings a day, if you're talking to various stakeholder groups, if you're running your sprints, if you're putting in requirements, the list goes on and on, but you're not building a product that achieves the outcomes that your company and your team wants to achieve, then in my view, and I believe in the view of a lot of Sendit product leaders, that PM would have failed. And that's the measure of success at Sendit, which is, as a product manager, are you building a product that customers want, but not only want, they're willing to pay for it in some way, in a metric that is important to your business. That metric need not always be money. Of course, money is the best, but sometimes it could be things like data, right, which your company might then use to earn revenues from other sources, right? So whatever metric is the most important for your team in that company, are you building products and improving your products and organizing your time in the best way to allow you to achieve that result? And I think that any manager of a PM, if the answer to that question is yes, it's hard for them to say that that PM is underperforming. Even if, for example, other people say, hey, they're not really responsive on Slack. They did not fill in this particular document correctly or on time. But the question is, did they build a product? Were they instrumental in driving and building this product? And was that product used by customers, which then grew important metrics for the company? If the answer is yes to all these, then I think they've done a good job. So if a company does expect a PM to do that, plus do all the other responsibilities 100%, then yes, I think they're overburdening that PM. But I think any company that seeks to do that should probably rethink that approach.
And I guess just playing a bit of devil's advocate, so what Marty's point was that you need to do those activities in order to get the outcome. So is there anything that your company does? Like, so I know some companies have like kind of maybe a product ops, research ops, design ops, those kind of functions that can alleviate some of the burden, because then the product manager doesn't need to have to do all of those activities. So is that something that Zendit has to kind of help?
Yes, we do, but not by default. It is not, we don't have, say, a policy whereby we think, okay, every single product team needs to have at least one designer, one researcher, one UX writer, one ops person, one marketer attached to each of these teams. Of course, it's unrealistic to have one unique person in every team, right? But it's not even the case that we necessarily think that every team should have someone assigned and have that person's time split amongst this additional product team. Because having such a policy by default would essentially be, saying, okay, I'm going to apply a solution before I even figure out what the problem is. And not every PM requires those types of support at every stage. It does depend on the phase of the product. It depends on the maturity of the product. For example, if it's an experimental product that the PM is looking to put in front of customers to get their feedback and potentially see if it's something that can drive growth. And if the answer is no, they will not continue with that. Then having a whole bunch of additional staff attached to them right from the start might actually turn out to be not that good a use of resources. So an answer is yes, but it's case by case.
Excellent. So thanks for that. Going to jump over now to you, Phuc, because you explained during your kind of introduction that you have a separation of responsibilities. And so can you dive a bit deeper there in terms of what I was saying there about kind of, I guess, talking to customers, understanding the problem, setting the vision, managing the delivery? Where is the boundary, and how do you work between the PMs in Australia and the product owners in Vietnam?
Yeah, that is very good questions. So at the beginnings, when a team see a product manager and product owners, the first question is who do what, right? So sometimes maybe you like the example you say, some may say PM have to do everything, right? From the research to the delivery. Somehow in my company, our structure, I would like to share is product managers would be in charge of product strategy with the 4 pillars. Number 1 is a product vision and mission. Number 2 is a persona, meaning that the targeted customer. Number 3 is a product metric, and number 4 is the product roadmap. Product roadmap, what is this? I would tell you a bit later. So what is a product owner role? Product owner role focus mainly on one thing, that is a delivery with the 5 pillars. Number 1 is a product backlog. Number 2 is a design experience. Number 3 is a feature roadmap. Number 4 is a release planning, and number 5 is make sure the methodology is agile delivery. So that's the 5 pillars that the product owners. So you will see, hey, there's my crossover, which is a product roadmap and feature roadmap. So product roadmap meaning that anything that large like more than 3 months or maybe sometime in more 6 month works, that is should be in the product roadmap. So to make sure that whatever we deliver will follow the company's vision. For sorry, for product owners.
And I'm just going to jump in there. I just want to thank you, just to let the audience know you're recovering from COVID at the moment. So
yeah.
Thank you for joining us today, because I know during the last week you haven't been feeling very well.
Yeah, actually now I'm still staying in the hospital. I'm plan to go out of the hospital tomorrow. Okay.
So apologies, I interrupted you there.
Yeah, we work so to make the team know all the product visions. We work product owners and product managers work back to back in sprint and iterations, and product roadmap will be shared from product manager to product owner. Product owner will work as a proxy for the PM to share the customer's need and market needs and those metrics that we will target for.
Excellent. So one of the challenges with that kind of split model of the product manager and the product owner is that there could be the risk of miscommunication, or maybe not even miscommunication, but missing the context. So if the product manager is talking to the customers, then there might be a gap between what the product owner understands and how they translate that in the short-term delivery, as you highlighted. So how do you manage that kind of risk of miscommunication?
Yeah, that's correct. We, of course, we stay in Vietnam and someone else stay in Australia, and number one is we have a different time zone, right? So the way we think about the product is a very different. So for Vietnamese, we never care about the differences in time zone, because in Vietnam only one time zone. But somehow in the Australia, everyone knows that there are 3 time zones in Australia, and whatever you do, you have to make it different time zone for different customer. For example, so other one we doesn't realize that gap between. So we encounter that mid communication. So the next thing we do is we do the retrospective session. So we find out, oh, the gap is a market understanding. So we decide that before we do anything, we give a broader context than the normal. So it takes more time for you to do that. So if everyone stay in the same country, okay, you know the culture, we know time zone, we know market, everything. But if you don't are not in that country, number one, you have to say what is the legal requirement, what is the context of the market. So things like that take a lot of time. If you say if you spend the whole time to share with the whole team, so product owner should be the one who overcome the obstacle of the culture and market. He should be the one, he or she should be the one who learn about the market from the product manager. And when he talk with the team, it saves a lot of time, other than if the last team to learn about the whole new culture and market.
So do you have any examples of areas where that miscommunication arose and how you solved it?
Yeah, like time zone is one of the requirement. The other things like legal requirements. For example, in Australia, the financial year start at the middle of the year, meaning July 1st. But in Vietnam, it's January 1st. So things like that should be translated from Australia to the team to the sharing session. So hey, this is the structure. What is the top law? What is the practice of the market? And what is the customer base? And even what is the competitors practice, for example. Without knowing those context, we will diverse the delivery into other outcomes that not fit the targeted market.
Excellent.
So
Thank you.
it's, yeah. So sharing is about the key. Yeah.
Brilliant. So Nigel, do you have any issues with, so there was a definite kind of a transfer of knowledge there in Fuchs' case, but do you have an issue, because as you were saying, you've got 70 to 80 product managers, they're all working on different areas. How do you ensure that there's cross alignment between those different areas and there's no kind of gaps, things that fall in the cracks?
I think we can't ensure 100% that there are no gaps. I think what we do is a mixture of processes, education, and training. So we invest quite a bit into our managers of PMs, so senior PMs, product leads, and they are expected to pass on these types of good disciplines, good habits to the junior PMs in terms of the cadence, the regularity, frequency, as well as the content of the information that they are sharing or that they're requesting for. So one example is many senior PMs will always remind juniors, and in fact, not just PMs, but staff in other functions, to not isolate information by direct messages and to keep communications in public channels unless it's confidential or sensitive. Oftentimes people just send a DM because maybe they are less confident about the question. They don't want to, perhaps be embarrassed for seeming to not know something in a public channel. But we very much encourage that in public channels instead of closed direct messages, because and we tell them that there is no shame, there's no penalty or anything like that if you're just asking about something that you do not know. That's one example. In terms of processes that we put in, we, as much as possible, we record everything, right? And that's why we favor async communication, asynchronous by documentation, instead of calling a meeting for everything. One, it saves people time, because I think there's nothing, I think one of the biggest gripes of workers, especially in a remote environment, is being invited to meetings where you don't actually need to be there. Then you're probably just spending the time either working and not paying attention, and then being surprised when someone calls on you and says, hey, what do you think about this? And you've not been paying attention, right? Or you just spend the entire time quiet and you don't contribute at all, but yet it was a use of 30 minutes of your time. So what we do is that we record everything. Before meetings are called, we always emphasize that there should be a doc circulated to discuss the issue at hand or the proposal or anything like that. And people should be given time to read that first and add their comments or questions. And if there are enough people who believe that a meeting is necessary, this is most often the person who initiates the doc, then and only then they would call it, plus getting the key people who they need to resolve some outstanding issue with on that call. The other people who might have no comments, or they might say, yeah, this looks good to me, I have no further questions, I know what you want me to do, they don't even need to join that call. It's just a couple of people who still have certain things that they want to iron out, and or maybe some decisions need to be made. So that's another way in which we try to mitigate things from falling through the cracks. Another example I can think of, which also makes use of documentation, is when we've got a large organization. It's difficult for people to really identify and narrow down who they should be approaching for what purpose and what each of these people are doing. And so we use documentation for that as well, where when someone asks about this, we can point to a clear resource that identifies all of this, puts this down on paper, or rather on the screen, and they can refer to that first. And if it is still unclear, then number one, we have an opportunity to help them. Number two, that's feedback on the doc that we can use to make the doc even clearer. And I think related to all of that, something that my manager, the head of product, taught me, which I now make a request of everyone, is when we are giving instructions or requests to people, it's sort of like the idiot-proof approach. We break it down into extremely easy to follow step-by-step instructions. And assuming that we have the time, we even create templates of the documentation that we're asking people to complete. So for example, if we want to ask them, hey, we want all PMs to start to write a certain template for sales or some other thing like that, we provide it first and we make it idiot-proof. It's not to say that, of course, we think our PMs are dumb. That's not what we mean. But essentially, as someone reading this, I can just mechanically execute it without having to ask you, the requester, any further questions in order to do what I'm doing. Because we recognize that when we make requests such as this, it takes up their time, attention, and bandwidth.
Excellent. Yeah, I'm a big fan of those async comms, but one of the challenges that I've personally faced is that you send out the document, and because people are busy, they're up to other things, that you're just not seeing comments come back, and you can't always just assume that they don't have any feedback. It's more that they haven't reviewed it at all. So how do you balance that? Because then you end up going back to a meeting to try get their time and attention.
Yeah. If we want to avoid a meeting at all costs, then I find what has worked out for me is directly messaging those people. Because in a thread, they're more likely to think, yeah, maybe I'm not that important. It's fine that other people can give their comments and I don't need to, right? And so sometimes that's true, because sometimes we want to be inclusive. We want people to give their buy-in on things that we ask them to do. But if they actually are the personality or their working style is that, thanks for being nice about that, but I don't really need it, then we're happy to say, okay, we've given you the opportunity to comment or give your input. You don't think it's necessary, that works for us. But if it's actually someone who's just really busy, but they are an important stakeholder, right? Then I find that just being naggy, right? And not thinking that you're being naggy, but just holding true to the belief that you're doing this for the good of the company. right? And of course, not doing it in a pushy or aggressive way, but just say, hey, you know, we really need your input on this because of the reasons X, Y, Z, you know, could you please find some time to give us your comments, right? And if they really, really can't do it async, then at that point in time, some people live by their calendar. So for some people, you drop a meeting into the calendar, they'll be like, oh, okay. Then they'll pop in and say, hey, what do you want me for? And then they will give you the attention that you need, right? So it really is about what works best for individual people. Of course, having to DM lots of people is not the most scalable system. And so that's what I mean by you have to prioritize between the people who you absolutely need input as well as decision making from, and the rest of the people who, you know what, if they just don't want to comment despite being given the chance to, then, and if you make the call that is not critical, then that could be potentially raised as feedback to the managers to say, hey, you know, this person isn't really the type that will respond to various things async. That could be a problem in the future. It's not really a problem right now, but you know, as they grow in the company, they will be needed for more things. So maybe we can talk about that, right? Yeah.
Brilliant. So Fook, do you have anything similar for trying to, like, I like that example of async documentation over meetings. So you did mention that one way that you tried to solve it is through retrospectives, through kind of daily stand-ups, getting a lot more collaboration. Do you have anything similar in terms of more of a written approach, or how do you try to scale that communication?
Yeah, I share all the activity that Nigel share, like a record meeting, like a sprint review is very important. I want everyone there because this is a new product. Everyone should be aware, right? And everyone should know how to work it. Otherwise, we have to go to one by one and explain how to use a new product or new version. So record the meeting is a very one good way to deliver the material that people can later see. The other thing is for the retrospective is it's added by every 2 weeks. So we use Miro to record everyone. What we document is agreed action item, and on the next Monday, I put some of the action item into the sprint planning. So to make sure that everything we conclude from a retrospective session could be in action. It's not just talk there just to please anyone. It should be in action. So we have a place to document the retrospective action.
Excellent. So we're almost out of time, but what we've been talking about, I guess, is the different structures, the different ways that they're working, the challenges of miscommunication. What other challenges are you kind of facing right now with your structure that you're actively working on that maybe could be useful, like some of your techniques that you're trying might be useful for somebody watching? So I'll start with you, Fook.
Yeah. One of the one of the issues I got in my new company is there are too many Slack channels. So people yeah, when they want they quit, oh, add 1, 2, or 3 people in on a channel, a new channel to chat. So to reducing those channels is very critical now, because now we know that emails doesn't work anymore. So everyone too busy to. So for my companies, we seldom send email. When we send email, we have some internal rule, like it's important to send an email. Everything else should reach you in the Slack, my DM, or some channel for the project. It's when because in email, yeah, it's you should read and you know it is it too, or you get in the CC, right? But for in it's like if notify immediately, it you mention in the name or just for the information. So we typically we use DM, we use Slack for all the communications. Anything important will be documented in the email. So email is like a storage.
That's a brilliant example of kind of the more real-time versus the more archival information, but the Slack overload is a definite problem.
Yeah, so Slack is we have some rule too. We cannot whenever someone want to create a new Slack channel, there should be an outage issue or something. Even for the outage issues, we have a channel for that. So we have some soft rule like try to not create so many selection. Otherwise, you will be flooded with so many information.
Yeah, brilliant. And I guess just to finish up then with you, Nigel, on a similar point, is there anything that you're actively working on right now to kind of some of the pain points that are emerging as you keep evolving and changing your structure that might be useful for other people?
Yeah, I think one thing that we are working on now that could be useful to other staff in companies that might be experiencing hypergrowth or stages of growth where not only your teams but various functions are enlarging. From on the product side, that would be your roadmap, right? I think the roadmap may, in terms of the friendliness to other orgs, may be ignored. And you don't want to leave your roadmap in a state where it gets to a point that other functions feel extreme pain and actually lots of pain points before they raise it to you and you start to improve it. So that is something that we're looking to actively improve now. And yeah, I think that the roadmap is actually a great way of facilitating communication between product and other organizations about what releases you have planned, what you need from various teams, what launches you have going out, all that sort of stuff, right? So yeah, that's one thing that I would recommend product leaders to start thinking about. And even if your roadmap is really great and meeting all those needs, it doesn't hurt to periodically check in on it from time to time, get some feedback from other stakeholders and think, hey, how could we improve this for you?
Yeah, I love that example. I could dig into roadmaps for a whole other conversation, but it is great to think about the roadmap as it's a product. So what are the consumers, the customers of that product? Is it fulfilling their needs?
Exactly.
Because it's more external value often than internal. But that's all we have time for today. As I said, I could go on for a long chat about roadmaps and different styles and pros and cons, but unfortunately we don't have time to get into it. But thank you, Nigel and Phuc, for joining us and sharing your thoughts today.
No worries. Thanks for the invite. Take care.
Great.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Take care.